Good afternoon and welcome to Pan-African News. We are coming to you from our studios in Abelinkwe 48 Swanika Street here in Accra. We are live on Facebook at Pan-African Television. We are also live on YouTube at Pan-African Television. My name is Justice Appiah. Now to our headlines for this afternoon. COVID-19 isolation centers in the Ashanti region full following spike in cases across the country. Government struggling to get hotels to isolate evacuated Ghanaians. Minister of Foreign Affairs said. We are ready to reopen basic school head teachers. So indicated. Later in business, Ghana's economy expands by 4.9% in first quarter of 2020. Details of these stories, including sports, international, and entertainment, will come your way for the next 1 hour. We are going for a short break. We'll be right back. First story for this afternoon. COVID-19 isolation centers in the Ashanti region are flooded with patients with the virus due to spike in cases across the country. Speaking at a press briefing, the Ashanti Regional Director of Health, Dr. Emmanuel Tinkran, outlined measures to expand facilities in the region in containing the situation.
Almost all the treatment centers are now full. Kofanoche has 18 beds. The 18 beds are now full. Kumasi South have 20 beds. So as at now, we have a total of 38 beds. All the 38 beds are now full. So what we've decided to do is that we need to expand the number of the beds that we have. It's against the law. Nothing is against the law more than your life. We will not continue. Whether you like it or not, we will have to enforce it. And I believe that that is the only way we will have to go. It's a challenge, but we need individuals to. If you disregard the protocols and the guidelines, then I'm not a prophet, but I'll tell you that the cases will continue to go up and the mortality will continue to go up. And nobody should wake up having increasing numbers of cases now in Kumasi Metro. And you can see we are also recording increasing number of deaths. As at now, the region have 38 deaths. The deaths are being audited, and as they complete, you will see it on the national platform also. We are doing well with the recoveries. As at now, a total of 778 have recovered, and they've been discharged and they are doing well. 95 health workers have so far contracted COVID-19 in Ashanti region. And as you might have heard, 95 and 97. Okay. So 97 health workers so far affected. And as you heard, we've lost one of our hard-working doctors, the medical director of SDA Hospital in Kwada. So we lost him.
Well, we are trying to reach our Ashanti regional correspondent, Isaac Ochi, to give us an update on that particular story. But away from that, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Shirley Ayokobochi, has revealed government's difficulty in isolating evacuated Ghanaians. Briefing journalists as a presser, she however stated that relatively smaller hotels who are willing to open their facilities to be used as isolation centers for Ghanaians evacuated from foreign countries has contributed to the high cost of hotel bills for evacuees.
The high cost of hotels. This for us also is a major problem. And when I say us, I mean the task force. Like I said, there are several ministries, department agencies working together. It is difficult for the task force to get hotels that are willing for their hotels to be used as quarantine. That is a major problem. And so the hotels that have agreed are the ones that are being used. Also, the second issue that we have is even if a small hotel agrees to be part of this, the problem would be that our hotels are small. The small hotels are very small hotels. So you probably would have a hotel with 10 rooms, a guest house with 5 rooms, and the logistics to try and, first of all, make sure that the health authorities visit them as they normally would will be a problem. Also, the security services would have to be posted at these quarantine centers or these hotels. That would also be a problem. So we're always looking for larger hotels, hotels that would be able to cater for large numbers to make it easier for us. So those are the two main issues why we're not able to get hotels, smaller hotels, to be part of this, apart from the fact that they also do not want their places to be used. And I'm sure we all know what kind of stigmatization having to deal with because of COVID. So these are the issues. So we're trying to find ways of cutting down the hotel cost. It's quite substantial, 600, 650, 500 Ghana cedis a day. However, that includes 3 square meals a day plus water. But if you times it or multiply it by 14 days, then you're getting, for 500, you're getting about 7,000 or so. And for somebody who is stranded might be a bit problematic because they've used up all their monies. But we're looking at ways in which we can them some small respite. The challenges that we're facing, I've said it already, finding hotels that want to participate, the cost of the hotels, who do we categorize as destitute? And the typical...
Now let's cross over to the Ashanti region and speak to our Ashanti regional correspondent, Isaac Ochi, to give us an update on the reports that the isolation centers in the Ashanti region are flooded with patients who are having COVID-19. Isaac, if you can hear us, give us an update on the situation in the Ashanti region, as reported earlier, that some isolation centers in the region are flooded with patients who are having COVID-19.
Well, thank you very much. As you all know, the current and national report cases of the COVID-19 have reached up to 12,000 and above. And of course, in the Ashanti region, we have also reported quite a number of them which have risen up to 2,403 cases with 38 deaths in the Ashanti region over here. Yesterday, the Ashanti Regional Directorate of the Ghana Health Service actually had a press conference to announce the current situation in the region right now. And as we were informed earlier, the Ashanti region, the flooded cases have caused the treatment centers in most of the places have gone up there. The Ashanti region director is really calling for more. And of course, as we know, he indicated that the isolation centers in the region, all the best capacity that they have already are really full. He mentioned of around 18 beds in the Kopanoti Teaching Hospital and also 20 beds in the Kumasi South Hospital and also about 38 beds in many other places that it was isolated for the patients are really full. So the directive is really calling on government and also other agencies to cooperate with them so that they can also have enough beds and also enough isolation centers to accommodate the patient that will be tested positive in this regard. But apart from that, the directive also mentioned of the lack of personnel who are attending to this particular patient, especially nurses and also doctors. It is in regard that when the issues really broke up earlier, they hired a lot of volunteers and other personnel to support the nurses and also the doctors. And all those people, they decided to get rid of them so that they can use the current nurses and also doctors who are in place to do the contact tracing in the region. So as I'm speaking to you, it has been announced that they are looking for more places that they can expand the isolation centers in the region with regards to the patients that are coming up.
Now, do you have an idea of what has increased the number of cases in the region? Because as of yesterday, the region has recorded over 2,000 cases of COVID-19.
Well, the measures of which really caused this particular increment cannot really be emphasized according to the health director, Dr. Tenkwan, he indicated that the people are not ensuring or emphasizing the use of the protocol that have been laid down. So according to him, that is the exact thing that they are going to enforce and also emphasize that many people will adhere to the protocols and also the laid down directives that have been pronounced by the president and also have been instituted by the health directorate. He said that when you go to town, for example, many people work without a nose mask and also the washing of hands and other things are not being emphasized. Because when the issue came up earlier, Ashanti region was recorded in a very lower rate. But as time progressing, when the president released the lockdown directive and also when we go to the marketplaces and especially most of the town or the congested places within the municipality, most people does not observe, especially the distance, the social distancing directive. So according to him, they believe that this has really caused the increment of the number in the region as we speak now.
All right. Now, yesterday, the health directorate, of course, I'm talking about the director of health in the region, outlined some measures to expand facilities so persons with COVID-19 could be accommodated and all of that, or the region is able to accommodate people with COVID-19, even if the numbers should increase further. What are some of those measures the directorate has put in place?
Well, apart from the expansion of the isolation sectors, especially the beds that will accommodate the attracted patients, they are also instituting to get, some volunteers, and they are doing training for some personnel that they will employ them to do the contact tracing to assist the nurses and also the doctors. But initially, it was said that they really employed some volunteers that they paid to assist the nurses and the doctors. But along the line, they realized that the money that they are being paid is really higher than the nurses that have been employed officially to take care of these issues. So they decided to get rid of most of them. But as I'm speaking to you yesterday, I was there, we were at a press conference, and they started training some volunteers from Red Cross Society that they are going to mechanize them to see them to do the following up of the contact tracing to assist the nurses. So apart from all the mechanisms, for instance, the PPE that have been delivered to most of the centers and also people that needs to be paid high to make sure all these mechanisms are ensured. They are also training people, some personnel, to support the nurses and also the doctors so that they will do the contact tracing to help the health directorate to attract some of these people that are also out there.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us, Isaac Oche. Isaac Oche is our Ashanti regional correspondent. He's been giving us an update on the situation of COVID-19 in the Ashanti region and the fact that some isolation centers are full, or let's say isolation centers in the region are full because of spike in cases of COVID-19 in the region. Away from that, some basic school head teachers have served notice that their schools will be reopened to enable final year pupils sit for their basic education certificate examination. They gave the assurance in tandem with mass disinfection of school facilities by Zoom Lion Ghana Limited.
Final year pupils in junior high schools across the country are expected to reopen on June 29, 2020 to sit for their exit examinations. As part of measures to curb the spread of COVID-19, government has directed Zoom Lion Ghana Limited to disinfect all basic schools in the Ashanti region. Some head teachers who spoke to Pan-African TV were full of praise for the Kufuor-led government. They also assured parents that safety protocols will be strictly adhered to as a means of curbing the spread of the virus in the school.
We are very grateful to Zoom Lion for actually the government, because not Zoom Lion per se, it's the government who contracted Zoom Lion to do the fumigation. We had no idea that they were going to come, so it's more like a surprise, a pleasant surprise actually, because we had contracted some other contractors to come and do the fumigation over the weekend, and this is a pleasant surprise. So, and it's free also. So we're very grateful to the government for doing such an exercise for us.
Yeah, I've met all my teachers who teaches in JHS. So we have prepared our timetable, and as they have promised, we are waiting Veronica Bacchus and other things to come. And when the students come, you make sure that they will do at least general cleaning before we start classes.
You allow them to buy some. You will not allow them to go out. Or if anybody have a chance, he can just bring his or her food so that he can just eat it during the short break, about 15 minutes, so that they can just eat and then continue their lessons.
Now, the National Identification Authority has recorded a number of cases of persons trying to register more than once since the commencement of its nationwide Ghana card registration exercise on April 29, 2020. Disclosing this at a press briefing at its headquarters in Accra yesterday, the Executive Secretary of NIA, Professor Kenneth Ajiman Atifa, has said since the commencement of the mass registration exercise, 32,756 cases of double registration have been recorded.
Since the commencement of the mass registration exercise, 32,756 cases of double registration have been recorded. This is a situation where an applicant attempts to register twice at a particular registration center or a different registration center. When this happens, the applicant's card will not be printed because the system holds onto it for reasons of suspected fraud. Having said that, all applicants whose cards are not yet ready should not attempt to register again during the mop-up exercise. Otherwise, the system will consider it as a fraud or double registration. Let me now turn my attention to challenge cases. Permit me to remind all Ghanaians that we have individual and collective bounden duty to vigorously police the boundaries of Ghanaian citizenship. It is a minimum that we can and should do to make our nation great and strong. Under the law, Ghanaians are mandated to challenge in good faith the eligibility claim of any person they believe is not eligible to be registered and issued with the Ghana.
The authority has, however, announced it is resuming the exercise in the Eastern region on Thursday, June 18, 2020 to Saturday, June 27, 2020, with registration centers expected to be open from 7 o'clock a.m. each day to 5 o'clock p.m., with the exception of statutory public holidays. The National Identification Authority is also commencing a mop-up registration exercise in all 16 regions, beginning with the Upper East and Upper West from Thursday, June 18, 2020 to Friday, July 3, 2020.
Now, former Deputy Minister of Transport Joyce Bawumia has slammed the comparison of records and politicization of national issues by some public officials, which has permeated every fabric of our society. Speaking on Pan-African Television's Good Morning Africa, the legal practitioner was of the view that the exceedingly worrying development was unhealthy for Ghana's democratic dispensation.
The second thing I always ask, does the NPP think they are more Ghanaian than people who are in the NDC or in the CPP or any other political party for that matter? When you preach a politics of denial of another's record, it makes you look almost very small, excuse me, because the larger stage is that you are in government. So when you come down to speak about anti-progressive, you are the key proponent of anti-progressiveness here. Because everything you've said shows that you don't believe in democracy. You don't even believe in the multi-party. No, let me finish. You don't believe. No, I'll come to you. You don't believe in. No, I'll come to you. You finish your criticisms before it occurred to you that you had been too partisan, so you tried to come to the middle. We are here on a debate. I used to be in the debating class. I know how to debate beautifully without any issues. The same Ghanaians you speak to about Jones, my brother, they are the same Ghanaians who worked on those projects too. The so-called fantasy projects. Ghanaians worked on those ones. The so-called fantasy roads. Ghanaians worked on them too. Or the NPP Ghanaian is better than the NDC Ghanaian.
No.
Thank you.
No.
Or the NPP taxpayer is better than the NDC taxpayer.
It's the same tax.
Thank you. The taxes you've taken off benefit my small entrepreneurial business. Any day. Correct. The corporate taxes that I look forward to an NDC government coming and taking a bold step to withdraw will benefit my small business. I am Ghanaian too, even if I'm NDC. Yeah. Sometimes I would always advocate that us in this bracket should advocate for a better type of multi-party politics, where we allocate reasonable, logic explanations for the things that happen. If you walk into a debate and you say that the NPP is the most progressive and is building projects for Ghanaians to get jobs. Hello. The projects the NDC put up were for Ghanaians too, to get jobs.
If you just tuned in, you're watching Pan-African News right here on Pan-African Television. We are coming to you from our studios in Abelenkpe, 48 Swanika Street here in Accra, Ghana. Now, away from the Ghanaian stories, let's go to Nigeria, where Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has urged for patience in the military's fight against bandits of northwestern states. Last week in Katsina State, 150 gunmen on motorcycles opened fire on residents, looted shops and stole cattle in village of Kadisau.
President Buhari said he had approved a joint military and police operation to fight the bandits in the states of Niger, Kaduna, Katsina, Zamfara and Sokoto. He appealed to the people of Katsina State to be patient and supportive of the ongoing military operations in the state. The 78-year-old also sympathized with the bereaved, those who sustained injuries and lost properties. Last month, Nigeria's military said it had launched airstrikes to halt a number of attacks.
From Nigeria, let's go to Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's government says it will increase civil servants' wages in the light of economic challenges worsened by COVID-19. The finance minister said that with immediate effect, salaries and pensions would be increased by 50%.
In addition, all civil servants will be paid a non-taxable COVID-19 allowance of $75 a month to be paid in United States dollars. Pensioners will also pocket an allowance worth $30,000. These COVID-19 relief payments will be for a period of 3 months starting from June. The cash-strapped finance ministry did not say how it would fund the increases. The news comes as it was announced that Zimbabwe's inflation rate has soared to 785%. The government said in April it would give cash payments to 1 million households most affected by the coronavirus lockdown. But some families expecting to receive the funds have yet to do so. As part of measures to help deal with economic crisis in March, the central bank also permitted the use of United States dollars, which was outlawed last year. For 10 years, Zimbabwe used foreign currencies after scrapping its own in 2009 because of hyperinflation.
Burundi's newly elected president will be sworn in today after the sudden death of his predecessor, who left him in an isolated nation in political and economic turmoil. He was elected in May in a vote disputed by the opposition and was meant to take office in August. However, the inauguration was sped up after his predecessor, Nkurunziza's shock death.
His swearing-in ceremony will take place at the Ngoma Stadium in the administrative capital, Gitega, with the public asked to arrive early to allow time for coronavirus measures such as hand washing and temperature checks. The 52-year-old former army general was handpicked to vie for the presidency by the dominant and extremely powerful CDD-FDD party. He is widely seen as more tolerant than his predecessor and not a regime hardliner. Diplomats and representatives of international organizations have been invited. However, Democratic Republic of Congo President Felix is expected to be the only head of state attending due to the ongoing pandemic. Nkurunziza, who ruled the East African nation for 15 years, was said by government to have died of a heart attack last week. However, the 55-year-old took ill less than 2 weeks after his wife had been flown to a Nairobi hospital for treatment for coronavirus, and speculation is rife he may have caught the virus.
Breakfast good day, every day.
Nestle. Good food, good life.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Oh, it's incredible! Bang on target!
Welcome back from that break. The Socialist Forum of Ghana has condemned the brutal murder of George Floyd in the United States of America and extended an invitation to organized labor as well as other identifiable bodies to join them in opposing racial injustice, exploitation and oppression across the globe. The group holds the view that the move will foster harmonious living and peaceful coexistence in a world blighted by war, hunger, and all manifestation of power. Now, let me read the statement from the Socialist Forum of Ghana. The Socialist Forum of Ghana, SFG, condemns the murder of George Floyd by the Minneapolis Police Department, and we condemn the tradition of lethal state-sponsored racist repression that continues to thrive in the United States of America after centuries. All peoples are equal, and there is no place for racism in the construction of a truly human civilization. Racism has no scientific biological basis. Skin color is a minor adaptation that humans living in different parts of the world developed over hundreds of thousands of years. Racism as an ideology which emerged with modern slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. European capitalists used white superiority to dehumanize all others and justify plunder, enslavement, colonization, brainwashing, racism, and even genocide. Racism allowed capitalists to pretend a shared interest with the European working class. Racism allowed capitalists to claim a civilizing mission, saving Africans from unchristian ways. SFG's opposition to racism is not thus a matter of race identification, but of common historical and cultural heritage and recognition that the conditions for our advancement in Africa are identical with that of black Americans, people of color, and oppressed people everywhere. The destruction of imperialism. It goes on and on and on. I've been joined in the studio by the convener of Accra Collective of the Socialist Forum of Ghana in person of Blaise Tulu. Blaise, good afternoon and welcome to Pan-African News.
Good afternoon, Justice. I'm happy to be here.
Very well. Tell me, what's the brain behind the statement issued by your outfit?
Yeah, I mean, the Socialist Forum of Ghana is a political organization.
Very well.
We are concerned about what is happening in the world, and the murder of George Floyd is a major international issue. And the statement we issued is our intervention to raise the consciousness of people all around the world about the nature and structure of the United States of America as a racist nation.
Okay, all right. So now tell me, the issue of racism in America. I mean, there have been a lot of people, you know, calling for justice. I mean, for all we know, we've been told that, yes, they've been sentenced to, I mean, the number of years they're supposed to spend in jail and all of that. Why is the SFG still calling on, you know, justice has been served? Why are you still calling on other identifiable bodies to, you know, join hands with you to fight against this?
Yeah, so it is important to understand that the issues that I raised in our statement is not directly targeted as just, you know, the murder of George Floyd. You know, it's you need to look at George Floyd as the last straw, maybe the last straw that will break the camel's back. And the camel's back of the United States of America is filled with an institution. It's an institution that is racist, you know, and that is oppressive, and that was built on a racist, a historical basis of racism. You know, so we are raising the consciousness of everybody to understand that racism in the United States of America is not new. It has a historical dimension. And in fact, it is important to say that it is an ideological justification for economic exploitation.
Take us through the historical dimension of racism in America. I mean, what is it like? How is that?
Yeah, I mean, the native people who lived in the United States were Indians. You know, they were not those that have been occupied now. You know, the land was taken over by, you know, by this group of people, built under the backdrop of blacks who were transported from Africa to build a nation. So the United States of America was built by black people, you know, and today they are the people that are suffering because in our historical dimension we reach a certain stage where exploitation of minorities can no longer hold.
Okay.
You need a certain basis to continue the capitalist mode of production. Then you bring in the angle of what? Racism. You know, so racism is just trying to give a certain justification, you know, to cover up the exploitation that is happening in the United States of America.
Okay, briefly, before we wrap up on this interview, how do we end this menacing, you know, problem of racism in the world?
Yeah, I mean, we take it from the point of view that it is a struggle. It's a struggle, as I've indicated before, that has not started today. It's a continuous struggle, and you saw the energy of people that came out from the streets of the United States of America to protest. What it tells us is that they are good signs. You know, it is important to say that we need a political instrument that can harness the various energies that are coming out from the death and killing of George Floyd. And importantly, we know that, you know, there will be victory in the future, but that victory will be precipitated by, you know, the process of struggle, which is ongoing, the raising of consciousness. The Socialist Forum of Ghana will continue to make our intervention to let people understand that merely skin color are just, you know, how do you call it, you know, just not a matter of biology, you know, it's a matter of geography even, you know, and this cannot serve as a basis for superiority.
What makes you think that George Floyd, in his case, let's use him as a case study, was actually killed because of his skin color, because he was a black?
Yeah, I mean, but that's why you cannot just look at George Floyd as an incident. You need to trace the history
but the
of the
Socialist
killing of
Forum
black
Ghana
people.
has made reference to George Floyd's death.
Yeah, and I'm saying to you that George Floyd may appear to be the straw that is breaking the camel's back. What it means is that it's just it's just an incident that is recalling the historical incidents of black people being killed. And then we can mention them. There are so many cases of the police brutality. In fact, various research have indicated that it is more likely for a police to hold on a black person than they are to hold on a white person. And the mere appearance that you are a black person immediately puts you that you have broken the law, that you are a criminal. And that is how the police in the United States of America have been trained. That is their history, and their actions are just, you know, a consequence of that history. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for speaking to us. That was Blaise Tulu. He's the convener of Accra Collective of the Socialist Forum of Ghana. Thank you so much, Blaise, for speaking to us. We are going for a short break. We'll be back with the happenings in the world of business. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. Back. Now let's look at what is happening in the world of business. Statistics released by the Ghana Statistical Service reveals that the economy grew by 4.9% in the first quarter of 2020 compared to 6.7% in the same period last year, driven mainly by the service sector. Government statistician Professor Samuel Kobina-Enin announced the figures at a press briefing in Tamale.
The services sector recorded the highest growth of 9.5%. The agriculture sector expanded by 2.8% and the industry sector by 1.5%. The service sector contributed 3.6 percentage points, 73.1%, to the overall gross domestic product (GDP) growth rate of 4.9% in the first quarter. Professor Enim said the main subsectors driving GDP growth in January to March 2020 gross domestic product were information and communication, manufacturing, education and public administration and defense and social security. Information and communication subsectors expanded from 67.6% in Q1 of 2019 to 77.4% in the first quarter of 2020. Its contributions to GDP growth was 2.10 percentage point, or 42.7%. Manufacturing subsector recorded a lower growth of 5.0% in the first quarter of 2020 compared to 5.6% in the same period of 2019. It contributed 0.60 percentage point, or 12.2% to the overall gross domestic product growth. The public administration and defense social security subsector expanded by 13.6% in Q1 of 2020 from 9.0% in Q1 of 2019, contributing 0.40 percentage point to gross domestic product growth. Negative contributors to the first quarter gross domestic product growth came from the subsectors of trade, repair vehicles, household goods construction, forestry, and lodging and professional, administrative and support activities. Construction subsectors contracted by 6.9% during the period and contributed negative 0.6% of gross domestic product growth. GDP growth rates without oil and gas, non-oil GDP, for first quarter of 2020 is 4.9%, which compares to the same period in 2019 with a growth rate of 6.0%.
Now, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced further easing of restrictions on coronavirus. Restaurants will serve meals to a limited number of people and hair salons will reopen to do brisk business.
Commercially licensed accommodation facilities will also reopen, as well as conferences for work purposes. Non-contact sports like golf and tennis will be allowed to resume. The president, in a televised address, said the date when the ease restrictions take effect will be announced later. He said the decision was intended to save livelihoods of more than 500,000 employees while being cautioned not to spread coronavirus. South Africans were concerned that the president did not speak on the ban on the sales of tobacco and cigarettes. The country has so far recorded 80,412 cases of the virus and 1,674 deaths.
When I announced that the country would be moving to alert level 3 from the 1st of June, I said that we would be giving consideration to the reopening of other sectors of the economy if the necessary safety precautions can be put in place and maintained. Following further discussions with industry representatives on stringent prevention protocols, and after advice from our scientists and consultations at the provincial level with our premiers, as well as discussions in the National Coronavirus Command Council, the Cabinet has decided to ease restrictions on certain other economic activities. And these activities include restaurants for sit-down meals, accredited and licensed accommodation, with the exception of home-sharing accommodation like Airbnb, conferences and meetings for business purposes, and in line with restrictions on public gatherings. Cinemas and theaters to be aligned to limitations on the gathering of people. Casinos, personal care services, including hairdressers and beauty services. Non-contact sports such as tennis, golf, cricket, and others. Contact sports will be allowed only for training and modified activities with restricted use of facilities. In each instance, specific and stringent safety requirements have been agreed by the various representatives of these disciplines and businesses, and those will need to be put in place before a business or an activity or a discipline can reopen, and protocols will need to be strictly adhered to for those entities or businesses to remain open. Announcements will be made in due course to give details of these measures and indicate the date from which these activities will be permitted.
Now, South African government would need to find at least 10 billion rands in new bailout funds if it wants to rescue South African Airways SAA with most of its routes intact. A long-delayed rescue plan has showed. The state-owned carrier's long-standing frailties have been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has pushed even previously profitable airlines into financial distress.
South African Airways suspended commercial passenger flights in March when the government imposed one of Africa's strictest coronavirus lockdowns. Rescue efforts have been the subject in fierce wrangling between the government, which wants South African Airways retained as a national asset, and the administrators who took over the airline in December after almost a decade of financial losses. The administrators' restructuring plan proposed the government fund or raise funding for a working capital injection of around 2.8 billion rands, 2.2 billion rands for layoffs, 3 billion rand for unflown tickets, 600 million rands for general concurrent creditors, and 1.7 billion rands for lessors. The Public Enterprises Ministry said in a statement that it would assess the plan and that it wanted to see a competitive, viable and sustainable national airline. The Finance Ministry, which has authority over funding, did not respond to a request for comment on a public holiday. The funding envisioned under the restructuring plan is on top of the 16.4 billion rands the government already set aside to repay SAA's quarantined debt and debt service costs, as well as the cost of supporting the restructured SAA until it becomes profitable. A projected income statement showed that South African Airways making losses of more than 6 billion rands over the next 3 years. The plan was based on South African Airways keeping almost all its African destinations, 3 of 4 domestic routes, and roughly half its intercontinental destinations. It envisages drastically scaling back the airline staff and fleet. Until the end of August, while many travel restrictions are expected to remain in place, South African Airways would need only 1,000 staff and 6 planes, compared with roughly 5,000 staff and 44 planes when it entered administration. It would ramp up operations slowly, with staff numbers rising to 2,900 and a fleet of 26 planes. Such a dramatic staff reduction could lead to a confrontation with trade unions. The administrator said they need the government support and a commitment to funding by July 15, 2020.
That's all for business. Up next is international news. Now let's take some international story from our international partners, People's Dispatch. On June 16, Tuesday, massive demonstrations of health workers were held in Paris and various other cities across France, demanding to save public hospitals in the country. The call for the mobilization was given by interagencies and collective interhospital and supported by unions including the General Confederation of Labour, CGT, and Solidarities.
According to reports, 100,000 people have marched in Paris alone on Tuesday, along with tens of thousands in other French cities including Marseille, Toulouse, Lyon, Lille, Nantes, etc. Protesters have denounced the Emmanuel Macron's government for weakening the French public health care system through a steady and systematic underfunding and neglect. Towards the mobilization, Collective Inter-Hôpitaux has accused that for over a year, hospital staff have been warning about the lack of means in public hospitals and their difficulties in carrying out their care task. For over a year, they have been asking for a hospital emergency plan to guarantee the quality and safety of patient care. Since then, the COVID-19 crisis has shown, if some were not convinced, the essential place of the public hospital and the absolute need to have staff and material means to meet the health needs of the population. The staff in the accident and emergency departments of around 250 hospitals in France began their strike in the spring of 2019, demanding an increase of €300 in the salary of emergency staff per month, 10,000 fresh recruitment to meet the staff shortage, and to stop the cuts in hospital beds and other medical facilities. Collective Inter-Hôpitaux has also stated that following the year-long strike on March 20, the President of the Republic promised a massive plan for the hospitals, but we are still waiting for the government's announcement and the response to our essential demands for the survival of the public hospital. The French Communist Party has expressed solidarity with the health workers' agitation, and PCF leaders Fabien Roussel and Pierre Laurent have joined the demonstration in Paris on Tuesday. Activists of the movement Union Communiste de France has also joined the marches in various parts of the country.
Credit to People's Dispatch for the international story. Up next is sports.